Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine has led to governments around the world bringing sanctions against a vast network of Russian oligarchs.
I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions.
Severe sanctions.
The strongest package of sanctions.
But to fully understand why, we need to know how the relationship between Russia and its oligarchs developed. For this, we can look at the experiences of three prominent figures. Mikhail Khodorkovsky, once the richest man in Russia, now living in exile in London. Roman Abramovich, previously the 8th richest man living in the UK, now in exile from the West. And Vladimir Putin, the former KGB intelligence officer, now the president of Russia. So, how did the KGB influence Putin and his oligarchs? In the early 1980s, even before Mikhail Gorbachev's perestroika reforms that would aim to liberalise the rigidly planned Soviet economy, it had become clear to factions inside the KGB that change was coming. The security agency, operating between Soviet and Western territories, was best placed to see just how badly the Soviet Union was struggling against the West. As a result, the KGB began creating a shadow economy, which they could control, designed to generate money that they would use for their own activities. They set up a black market network to smuggle in embargoed Western goods and technologies, began experimenting with ways they could make money within the closed Soviet economy, and found methods of hiding money via proxies outside of the Soviet system for whatever might come next. One such KGB experiment involved Mikhail Khodorkovsky. Having risen rapidly through the Communist Youth League, he was chosen to head an initiative to provide computer programming, as well as finding ways to make money from scientific research. To achieve this, Khodorkovsky needed permission to make money, which was illegal at the time. He also needed computers, which were still under embargo from the West. The KGB provided both, and Khodorkovsky went on to effectively head up the Soviet Union's first private business. In 1985, when the perestroika reforms were introduced, the KGB experiments accelerated. But the real moment of change came with the fall of the Soviet Union. Khodorkovsky and others like him, who had already started making money, took full advantage of their newfound freedoms, and the oligarch was born, by which we mean a billionaire Russian with close political connections. At one point in this period, it was estimated that just 7 oligarchs controlled 50% of Russia's economy. And the KGB? It was dismantled and broken into 4 new services, seemingly losing all control over Russia's finances. Roman Abramovich's story is typical of many of the oligarchs, establishing small businesses under the perestroika reforms before diversifying their interests in the post-Soviet era. However, his steep rise came after being taken under the wing of Boris Berezovsky, an older, more established billionaire with strong political connections. Berezovsky helped Abramovich secure the ownership of Russian oil company Sibneft in a type of deal which was typical of the time, a rigged auction where only a fraction of the company's real value was paid. And, in this case, the Russian state loaned Abramovich over half of the winning bid. Abramovich and Berezovsky would later fall out over the Sibneft deal. They would also experience vastly differing fortunes. After becoming increasingly critical of Vladimir Putin, Berezovsky ended up exiled in London, and in March 2013, he was found dead in his home. The cause of death remains open. In contrast, just under a decade after the Sibneft deal, Abramovich sold the company back to the Russian state for $13 billion. While Mikhail Khodorkovsky and Roman Abramovich were starting to make their first money, Vladimir Putin was employed as a KGB officer, tasked with recruiting agents in an area of East Germany where the security service operated their shadow economy. After the fall of the Soviet Union, under instruction from the KGB, he moved to St. Petersburg. There, he quickly ascended to the position of deputy mayor and was involved in numerous deals not dissimilar to the Sibneft deal. In both of these roles, Putin became adept in the ways of the new Russia. When Putin became president, he immediately began consolidating the country's wealth and power, starting with the investigation and arrest of media tycoon Vladimir Kaczynski. Although he was later released, this sent a warning, not just to the press, but to the oligarchs too. He began redistributing wealth and control over state resources amongst his friends, many of them ex-KGB. His critics also allege that he became extremely wealthy himself, his fortune being held by a series of proxies. This was different from the Soviet-era corruption, where state officials might receive payoffs and better living conditions. Now, in the Putin era, state officials were becoming immensely wealthy as the oligarchs. The fates of Mikhail Khodorkovsky and Roman Abramovich only goes to further emphasize the new rule of order in Putin's Russia. In February 2003, Putin gathered the remaining members of the powerful Semi-Bankirshina for a meeting. Mikhail Khodorkovsky made a presentation on behalf of all the oligarchs, alleging state corruption was contributing to 10 to 20% of losses against Russia's GDP. He was effectively accusing Putin and his officials. Khodorkovsky had misjudged Putin, who turned the conversation on its head, shifting the discussion to how the billionaires came by their wealth. Over a period of 10 years, the Russian government arrested and charged Mikhail Khodorkovsky with fraud, tax irregularities, embezzlement, and money laundering. He was imprisoned for 9 years, his companies liquidated, and his assets sold off in a closed auction. The experiences of both Khodorkovsky and Kaczynski show us how easily wealth can be seized in Russia, because most of the oligarchs had come to attain their wealth by the same means. The key to maintaining their position was by pledging loyalty to Putin. Having been close to both Putin critic Boris Berezovsky and former President Boris Yeltsin, Roman Abramovich could have been viewed as being in a vulnerable position. But Abramovich, like the other surviving members of the Semi-Bankirshina, fell into line. Tax investigations came and went, and around the same time, he also began to use his fortune for seemingly civic purposes. Yet while allegations have been made regarding Abramovich's close ties with Putin, it's something he's always denied. If it were not for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Putin's oligarchs would have remained unscrutinized, leaving many in the West continuing to believe they were simply successful financial industrial billionaires. In reality, we now know that modern Russia is run more akin to Putin's days in the KGB, where loyalty, wealth, and back-channel dealings are the means of operation.